Welcome, everyone, to today's Public Health Essentials for Health Department's webinar. Today's session is focused on designing success stories and promoting the impact of public health work. I'm Christine Ganella. I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Public Health Association, and I'm also the Managing Director of Strategy Development with Public Health Management Corporation. Today's webinar is being hosted by the Pennsylvania Public Health Association and Public Health Management Corporation with support from the CDC Public Health Infrastructure Grant, as well as the National Association of County and City Health Officials, NACCHO. The Pennsylvania Public Health Association is the state association of the American Public Health Association and seeks to advance health and all policies throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Public Health Management Corporation represents the Public Health Institute of both Pennsylvania and Delaware and seeks to build healthier communities through partnerships with government and foundations, businesses, and community-based organizations. It fulfills its mission to improve the health of the community by providing health promotion, outreach, education, research planning, technical assistance, and direct services. So welcome, everyone. Before we transition over to today's presentation, just a couple housekeeping items to review. To enable your captions, please click on the closed caption button along the bottom of your Zoom window. You will see the option to enable live transcripts. All participants will be muted throughout the presentation. We encourage our participants to submit questions during the presentation. To do so, please use the Q&A tab on your Zoom control panel. It will be relayed to the presenters as well as the team at PPHA, and we'll work to answer those questions throughout the webinar as well as at the end of the webinar. Please use the chat feature to introduce yourself, as well as share any tech issues that you might be experiencing. A post-webinar survey will pop up at the end of the webinar. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey evaluating this live webinar, as your feedback is critical to the ongoing development of our webinar topics. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available in the next day or two on our learning management platform. So now, without further ado, I'd like to transition over to our speaker for today. Chloe will be presenting today. Chloe Lake is a Senior Communications Manager at the National Network of Public Health Institutes, otherwise known as NMPHI, and she oversees their communications and convenience portfolio. Her work focuses on the Public Health Infrastructure Grant, otherwise known as FIG, and she is the primary point of contact at NMPHI for FIG-related communications. In this role, she coordinates with two other national organizations, the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials, or ASTO, and the Public Health Accreditation Board, FAB, to keep FIG recipients and partners informed and engaged in their shared work. She is also responsible for constructing compelling stories that demonstrate how FIG funding is being leveraged to strengthen the nation's public health infrastructure grant, describe how investments like these impact communities, and inspire the next generation of public health workers. Chloe holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in both communications and psychology from the State University of New York at Buffalo and a Master of Public Health from the Tulane School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine. We at the Pennsylvania Public Health Association, as well as Public Health Management Corporation, have had the pleasure of working with Chloe over the last couple of years. And so we're really thrilled to welcome Chloe to today's webinar.
Thank you, Christine. And everyone in the chat, keep me honest if any of my screen share goes awry. Assuming that it has not, thank you all for being here and listening to me tell you all about designing success stories for impact. As Christine mentioned, and as I'll share a little bit about my background as well, while the focus of my work is the Public Health Infrastructure Grant and FIG in general, this presentation will look at success stories through the lens of FIG, but this is a practice that you can apply to really any grant that you receive or any resources that you receive, because the goal of this is not to really talk about how we can do the best possible job promoting the public health infrastructure grant. It is about how you guys can do the best possible job of promoting your agency and what is possible for your agency to do when you're given adequate resources. So a little bit of background about me, as mentioned in my bio, I have been working on the public health infrastructure grant communications for 3 years now. And before that, was in a variety of settings, both nonprofit and state health department level. But I've been doing health communications for over 10 years. And this has been working on FIG has been such a privilege and an honor, because it's really allowed me to speak to other public health professionals about what's so great about public health. So it's been a really fun ride to be talking about. Again, we're always talking about public health programs and work that we do on behalf of other people. But for FIG, we ourselves are the heroes of this story, and we're the main characters. So it's been really great to interview. At this point, I've talked to over 100 FIG recipients and national partners and technical assistance providers about what they've been doing through this grant. As Christine mentioned, we have NNPHI works with public health institutes to host in-person events. The Probably the most notable of which are the regional hub convenings, and I go to nearly all of them with my camera crew and talk to folks about what they're doing with this money, and then turn those interviews into standalone success stories. So through the interviews and through written stories and brief highlights, NNPHI has published over 65 FIG success stories. So if anyone was wondering if we have seen progress and seen success through FIG over the past 3 to 4 years, the answer is yes. We've seen quite a bit of success, and I'm sure there's a lot more to come as we enter the final sort of 18 months of this funding period. So before we get into what we're going to talk about today, I do need to acknowledge that this is FIG funded, as one might expect, and the funds were available through CDC. And also, if I say anything out of pocket, please do not hold it against CDC. They do not claim me. So today, for our agenda today, we're going to sort of get a little bit of grounding on why success stories matter. Again, this will be through the lens of FIG, but this will apply to any funding that you receive or anything that your health department is doing. We'll get into what makes a strong success story, what kind of ingredients you want to use to write a strong success story. We'll talk about how stories get into the world, especially through FIG, but I will invite you all to think about how at your agency you can think about this from beyond just the FIG lens. And we'll get a little bit into operationalizing storytelling of how we're moving from theory to practice. In terms of, we won't be doing a lot of in real-time practice today, just with the format of this, but I will give you some tools to practice with on your own. So getting started with why are we doing this? And I'm sure many of you have already heard about the importance of storytelling and really, if anyone's been to a storytelling workshop before, and we've really heard about how that is the main way that humans relate to one another, by telling stories. All of that is true. To narrow the focus a little bit, for storytelling in FIG, we do have some specific communication goals set by the national partners and set by CDC as our funders. So the first of those goals is to, of course, showcase the positive impact of FIG funding and technical assistance on FIG recipients, but probably even more importantly, the communities that they serve. So all the national partners and CDC have a vested interest in showing why this funding is important and what the outcomes of this funding and this technical assistance, what they are. Another key goal is related to the first one, educate leaders and policymakers about the importance of sustained investment in public health infrastructure. So again, as anyone who is familiar with the public health infrastructure grant knows, the big word for the first several years was flexibility. So really being telling stories that outline the benefits of having flexible funding instead of funding tied to a specific disease or a specific health issue or initiative has been really helpful in terms of building up, again, our infrastructure. And we want to be explaining why that's the case and why that should continue. And then another major goal of FIG storytelling was to inspire other recipients, to show them what they can do with that FIG funding. Because as I think everyone understands, that if you get a big chunk of funding and not a tremendous amount of direction, it's great to know what other folks are doing with that and what you could maybe replicate in your own setting. So that's sort of where all the national partners came into this of gathering success stories related to FIG of reaching these three goals. But even beyond that, success stories in general help us reach our goals. So they're not, I've been really trying to shift even my own paradigm of success stories as being something that happens at the end of a grant or something that, we think about as I was at an in-person event for FIG once and someone said, well, everything that you're talking about, bragging about our work and sharing our impact, it really sounds a lot like marketing. And I said, yes, yes, it is. It is marketing. And we as a field could do a better job of marketing ourselves and our value. So success stories are really the primary mechanism that we have for doing that. And I always think of communications as being less about what I want to say and more about what I want my audience to believe and what I want my audience to walk away with when they have read a message from me or seen a video or read a success story. And what I really want to see, and what I know also the other national partners want to see from success stories, is that upon seeing our brief highlights and our success stories, policymakers and other decision makers will believe that investment in public health infrastructure produces meaningful returns, not just for health departments, but for everyday people. So I'm based in New Orleans, Louisiana. I want success stories to make it clear how I, as an average resident of New Orleans, Louisiana, am benefiting from the public health infrastructure grant. So really helping them understand and believe that this is making a difference for their constituents. We want recipient health departments to feel confident that you can use FIG to clear a path to your goals. I think this is, of course, as we're in past the midway point of the grant period. I think this is still really important, but was particularly important at the start of the grant to really build that confidence and show those pathways forward. And then this one is a little bit of a new one and a specific one to the work that I've been doing with some health departments and with NNPHI, is that FIG success stories are a really great opportunity for us to show potential other funders, or even if we're not getting into other funders, community partners or people we want to work with, to believe that we are well equipped to translate resources into results. So we want to prove that we are safe investments, that when we are given resources, whether that be money or staff or time or expertise, that we put those resources to work and that we have the infrastructure ready to go. So like that there won't be a lot of time lapse between getting resources and putting them to work. And the public health infrastructure grant and the success stories related to that can really give us a great opportunity to make that case. So again, I sort of mentioned earlier this paradigm shift. Another reason that we want to be leaning into stories is that it will help us move beyond performance reporting. So I know that many of us working, and I'm assuming that most of the folks on the room today are all very familiar with performance reporting. I know that it is a very regular and repeated part of our job. So it's easy to, whenever you're asked to say, think about a success story, to really get to be coming at it from that performance reporting paradigm, because we're constantly asked, okay, how have you made progress on your work plan? What has been the outcome of what you're doing? But the thing about performance reporting is it's important and we do have to keep doing it. But the goal is really to demonstrate compliance. It's to show that you are doing what you said you were going to do with the money and you're meeting those requirements. And the other thing is that it really ends with the grant period. So we're reporting back to our funders and others about, okay, this is what we've done with the money, and we did exactly what we said we were going to do. And now that the grant period is done, that person is no longer that interested in hearing from us because their job is done and our job is done with that grant. All of this sort of situates FIG or the general funding as the prize, and we're being asked to, show us how you earned this grant, like show us why you deserved this funding. That's the performance reporting paradigm. Where we want to move is a storytelling paradigm where we're no longer demonstrating compliance, we're demonstrating value. So we're not just saying, here's how we met all these requirements. We're showing, here's how we as a health department are increasing our services, or that we're making a measurable difference for our communities because we were able to apply these resources, where it's less focused on the methodology of how you went from, again, how you completed every aspect of your work plan, and more focused on the outcomes. So focused on what's changed and giving some context for why that work matters. Also, in an ideal scenario, storytelling is woven into an ongoing narrative. It's not a standalone thing that we do and we kind of move on from. As I mentioned, performance reporting by its very nature will end with the grant period. When you're done with the grant, you're done with performance reports. Storytelling is meant to, it's in an, again, I think this is something that we're learning, but it's ideally all of the success that you have been able to share from one grant should reinforce a larger narrative about your health department. So you're not reinforcing a narrative about the grant and necessarily saying, oh, this grant was so important and this funding was so important. You're talking about this health department's important. And when we were given, again, we were given the resources that we need. Let me show you what's possible. So we want to be using the funding as proof of what we can do as public health agencies instead of framing the funding as the prize and really elevating that funding structure over what the health department does. So it's subtle. I think a bit of this change, and it's something that takes practice, but the storytelling can help us even when we're not necessarily creating a story that will be published in the news. Even just thinking about this in our conversations with leadership or in our conversations with others of how are we moving from a strictly performance reporting paradigm, showing how we fulfill those points, to moving into a storytelling paradigm, like, okay, why does the work matter, and what is this saying about us as a health department instead of what are we saying about this grant. So what's in all this for you? Because I don't want to, I will say it's a lot of work. It's really, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of thinking, and often it takes a lot of staff. So what is the value of telling success stories about your health department? Well, one, it helps you get connected to others doing similar work. So that's been a great benefit of the Public Health Infrastructure Grant specifically, is that there has been a lot of opportunity for peer learning and peer sharing, but success stories can even beyond FIG, if we are getting into the habit of regularly publishing success stories about our health department's work, it will help us connect with other public health professionals or connect to community partners. So if you're, say, courting a community partner, they want to know what you've done in the past, what success you've had. That will help them get to know you and know if your work aligns with theirs. As I mentioned, this will also help you begin building a library evidence for what your health department can do when you're given the resources. So this is, again, it's never meant to be about, oh, like FIG came in and saved public health. This is, you guys were doing great work and important work, and this was just a boost that helped us maybe connect some of those dots or fill some of those gaps to continue and enhance the work that you've been doing. So you want to be using these success stories as library as proof points of that. Also, I highly encourage everyone to be using success stories internally. So I think a lot of our focus ends up being for external distribution and like how do we engage media and how do we talk to the public. That is important, but sometimes even before that, we need to tell our agency leadership's going on. We need to tell our partners what's going on, what we're doing with the money, because especially we'll get into this later in the presentation, but we need to be thinking about, who is in a position to act. And sometimes we don't need a press release when we can just have a meeting with a key decision maker. So we can use stories to help make our case for those things, and we can really sort of even or just increase our visibility and break down silos within a department. And lastly, of course, our big our big goal of strengthening the case for future public health investment, but also for sustained public health investment. So I think something that we've been seeing with infrastructure is that we don't want to keep moving forward and then having to sort of start from scratch in these stop and start funding cycles. So we can be using these success stories to make the case for sustained investment in public health. And I do want to just share a quick example of this is a photo of the Seattle and King County Health Department. Uh, they had they hosted a public health camp for teens and young adults in their region. And they invited all of these high schoolers and early college students to come to the health department for 5 days and learn about what careers are available to them, learn about what services are available to themselves and their families. And it was really highly rated. I was able to go and document it and create a story about it. And first of all, the public health camp was great, but they were able to use the video and the success story that we worked on together to build buy-in within their department and within their leadership for another camp the year after. So this was in 2024, and then in 2025, the camp was even bigger, and they were given dedicated communication support because they were able to build the case for this. So even before this necessarily, like I said, gets out of the four walls of your health department, even just using success stories to build buy-in within the health department can be really valuable for the work that you're doing. And I'm going to check the chat really quickly. Thank you, thank you much for. I'm glad that this is resonating with some folks. And come on, okay. So that's a lot about why we're here and why this is important. Why this is important. Some of you may be wondering, like, okay, great. Now, how do I make this happen? So there are some core ingredients for making a delicious success story soup. So we're going to talk about just sort of what are the key elements that you're going to want to include in all success stories, and then how do we punch up the flavor in each of these success stories for maximum impact. So the core ingredients and again, this is through sort of a FIG lens, so this may change a little bit depending on what you're working on, but I would say that this is transferable to virtually any grant or funding that you have. So the first thing that you'll need is an explanation of what you're doing. So that feels obvious, but it is harder to do than it looks. But you really want to be sharing a concise and plain language description of the specific activity that you're trying to highlight. I do want to encourage everyone to again, I come from public health. I know that it can be very difficult to select one activity when you're like, but they're all connected. I will challenge you all to pick one impactful activity to explain so that it's not too overwhelming for your audience. But so we're picking one thing that we want to highlight that we're really proud of, and we're trying to describe it in as plain of language as possible. This will depend a little bit on who your target audience is, but even if you have an audience that's really familiar with public health, we still want to try to be as plain as possible just to not make them do extra work. The other core ingredient we'll need is we do need to explain how the grant usually, in my case, it's always FIG, but we do need to say how these resources made it possible. So that might be funding. It might be technical assistance. It might be that a grant or partnership just allowed you to create connections with the right people, and that opened up a world of opportunities. But we do need to be sharing that mechanism for change in all of our stories. And then something that every single story needs to have, this is maybe the most important point, is clear benefits for community members. And I know that, again, especially with infrastructure, sometimes these benefits are not where most of us are not going to have immediate changes in health outcomes that we can change at this point. So, and we don't need, the nice thing is that we don't need that for success stories. We can just share what we anticipate. We can share what we anticipate the benefits will be for community members, or what any of those interim benefits are. So we'll look at some examples of big success stories, but we do want to be connecting the dots between infrastructure investments, which tend to be somewhat removed from the human element of everything, and can feel a little abstract, and figuring out how to weave that thread so that at the end of our story, people understand, oh, that's why quality improvement activities were important for community members, or oh, that's why having a workforce director was important for directly leads to benefits for community members. So we're going to start with our core ingredients. What are we doing? How did the grant make it possible? how are community members benefiting, and then we're going to spice it up. We're going to add some flavor. So these are things that you're not going to have necessarily each of these items for all of your stories, but as much as you can find them, you should incorporate them into storytelling. So the first is, of course, data points. So as much as we can share evidence of progress or impact, we absolutely want to be doing that. We want to be sharing the most meaningful numbers that we have, or evidence can also be stories or quotes or changes. I do again want to the if if you don't have high level peer reviewed evaluation data, do not worry about that. This is not an academic paper. This is a success story. Like this is typically something you're going to be telling in a presentation or publishing on your website or potentially sharing a quote with the media if asked. It doesn't need to necessarily, you don't need evidence that you're going to write a paper about. You just need some initial data points that are accurate, but they don't need to be, again, you don't need to have share your full methodology here. We just kind of want the big number. The Another thing that can be really helpful with success stories is sharing a before and after perspective. So that helps, again, like this is with any story, we want to know, we want to sort of have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And a lot of the ways that we can structure that with funding related success stories is before we had this funding, this was the problem, and or we were dealing with this problem coming out of COVID or something else, and here's how we solved it. So here was our state before, and here's our improved state after, and really helping people see the difference that the funding has made, but also the difference that your health department has made. And then lastly, as I mentioned, infrastructure can get a little bit dry. It can be a little bit abstract. So we want to be adding that human element back in as much as we can, because we all know that public health infrastructure does run on people. It is all about people power and relationships. So how do we bring the people behind this work front and center? And we can do that through quotes or anecdotes, either from project leaders or the people working in this. If this is harder, but as much as we can get quotes and stories from the people that are actively benefiting from our work. So if those are folks in the community, if that's a partner, if that's really anyone, we want to be getting their perspective and bringing those human stories up to the forefront. So I know I've been talking for a second. Oh, we're not onto examples yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we get into an examples of this, I do get asked frequently, yes, we've got these ingredients, but I have so much that I'm doing through FIG, or there's so much going on in my health department, I don't know what I should pick to highlight. And I advise people to consider sort of these four buckets or themes to consider when you are deciding what you want to highlight. So the first is just Public Health 101. And this is really what we think about. I always say, like, how would you explain public health to your relatives at Thanksgiving when they're like, what do you do? And you tell them and they're like, so you're a nurse. And you're like, not quite. We want to be answering the question, is this activity making community members safer? Is it making it easier for your community members to make healthy choices? So have you made it easier to access fruits and vegetables? Or have you made it easier for them to go to the doctor or go to the clinic? Are you protecting them from extreme weather events? Are you, is there a heat wave and now they're safer? Are you better able to detect, prevent, or respond to health threats? So that could be, like I said, anything from an outbreak all the way to a natural disaster. So these are, again, where we really think of what our core services are, our essential services. How are we, what has some activity within the health department and through a grant, how has that made it easier to keep people healthy? Like what's our public health 101 approach there? How have we connected these dots so that, again, we're promoting health? Another, that's also, I think, often the hardest one to find, because again, a lot of our work is very, doesn't have necessarily that direct line to like, and now people are safer in hurricanes. So that's not your only theme that you have available to you. So another one that I like to use a lot is increased public accountability. So let's say that you are you're starting up a community advisory council. What that's really about is being more accountable to your public. And this is framing that makes that a little more concrete, especially in tricky, politically sensitive environments, where we want to be showing like, how are we increasing transparency about how we're using taxpayer dollars? We're doing it through community advisory boards. We're doing it through surveys of people. We're doing it through community health assessments, but really showing how you are being accountable to the people that you serve. This is also the theme that I often recommend people use when they want to say something about equity and health equity, because I know that we are uh, many of us are in situations where we are unable to use that language. So, but when we think about equity, like what are we really talking about? Often we're talking about being more accountable to everyone in our community that we serve and ensuring that everyone can access our services regardless of their age or their ability or their access to transportation. So we can be framing a lot of that, what we used as shorthand, and we said, oh, equity and inclusion. We can really be reframing that as being more accountable to the publics that we serve. Other key themes are increasing efficiency or improving services. So are critical processes going faster? We'll watch a success story that is about that. Are you serving more people, the same level of staff? Are you becoming more efficient? Are you creating cost savings? Are you improving service delivery through workforce training? You're training up your staff, so in turn, they're doing a better job serving their communities. A lot of FIG is focused on workforce development, so this is a really critical one of connecting those dots to community impact. And the last major bucket is that scalability and sustainability piece. So we want to know, did you use this funding to get more funding? Did you use this funding to scale up some programs that were already working? Are you maybe expanding it to new markets? Are you able to, again, you've got a program that was really popular and now more people are able to get it? Are you building up partnerships that expand your reach? So I heard, for example, a partnership with a Department of Health and their community level domestic violence shelters, where they were able to serve more survivors of domestic violence through this partnership, which cost them nothing. It was but it immediately expanded their impact. So think about those scalability concerns, especially if you're finding yourself towards the end of a grant where you're really making the case of like, hey, we're going to continue this work and this is how we can continue it. Can you meet us in the middle? Is really leaning into that scalability and sustainability stories and showing examples of, again, how you not only put resources to good use, but in some cases you're able to multiply the resources that you've been given. So that's a lot of words to basically say, wherever we can, we want to be using stories to say, here's how my agency is saving time. Here's how my agency is saving money, producing cost savings, and here's how my agency is saving lives. So we're saving time, we're being more efficient, we're being more, we're streamlining our processes, we're saving money, which is also implied of either creating cost savings or being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. So we're being fiscally responsible. We're getting input from our community about how they want this funding to be spent. We're using our dollars wisely, and then we're saving lives. And again, that goes back to how are we, of course, saving lives, but also how are we helping people be healthier? How are we connecting people to health services? In some instances, there are stories, there is actually a clear output of saving lives, but ultimately, I want everyone in the back of their minds to be thinking about, like, why did we do this in the first place? And it's almost always gets down to that helping people be healthier and saving lives theme. So if all of those themes are too much on the previous slide, if you just think about saving time, saving money, saving lives, that will help organize a lot of your thoughts about how you talk about your work. So let's hear one of our FIG recipients talk about this. This is an example I use all the time because Rich does a really good job talking about incorporating a lot of the ingredients that we discussed. So I will hopefully have this sound correct. I'm going to mute myself and play the video.
FIG grant funding has enabled us to build our network. I've been able to meet people across the country in similar sized agencies, gathering best practices. The FIG infrastructure has curated some of these resources for us through websites, and again, the connections I've made. Also, they have a formal program for me to obtain a mentor who runs quality improvement for their state. I asked for that, that's exactly what I got, and I feel like I got the best person on the planet to help me learn and also adopt new QI tools to help us have a bigger impact. The biggest, quickest win we have so far with these new QI tools, which helps us not only run projects, but how to track those in a system where everyone can see to give us more recognition and reinforcement of this new higher QI mindset. Biggest outcome we have so far is better access to behavioral health care. And that's one of our big growing areas in our agency. And I call this a medium-sized project, but the impact has been huge. By working through our call center and our therapist and our front desk and the whole scheduling system, we had some bottlenecks. And by making some changes through a structured QI project that is, this QI template is new for us, we've been able to streamline our call center process as well as the folks at our front desk that greet patients. That's enabled us to have one source of scheduling, but also we've got some AI tools in development that we're testing in our clinic, soon to be in behavioral health, to predict when patients are going to not show up for their scheduled appointment. This is going to help us to keep these providers busy when they're on schedule, being able to serve as many people as they can. So it's already enabled us to serve more patients with the same number of staff, and I see that just increasing as we go along. Tabitha is our behavioral health manager. She tells us today we had a non-established Spanish-speaking patient who needed behavioral health services. We met with them, did a brief intervention, and scheduled them with Norma, our only Spanish-speaking BH provider, that's behavioral health, for next week. This teamwork and communication between departments is commendable. She also tells us that Norma is now booking out to early October, that's about 3 weeks from now. Prior to this project taking place, her backlog was at least 3 months to see a brand new patient. So this is a huge impact on folks, especially for this population that needs the help. One more story from Cassandra, who's our clinical office supervisor. We continue to have success with the call center scheduling last-minute cancellations. There is currently no wait list for behavioral health. All patients have been placed so far. This is a huge improvement from where we were just a few weeks ago with this project.
Okay, sorry I paused that in the middle. I was trying to check the chat. Normally I would popcorn this around and ask folks sort of what we felt Rich was doing well. I do want to keep us moving along, so I will share just some highlights from this video that I think he did an excellent job with. I think the first is that Rich did a fabulous job connecting the thread of, again, very internally facing activities, which is quality improvement. So looking at a process and optimizing that process, which again feels it is an inherently internal activity, and connecting that all the way to more community members getting access to behavioral health services. So that is something we really want to see in a lot of stories of how did you, yes, you use the public health infrastructure grant to connect to experts in quality improvement, which allowed you to make some small changes that had a big impact to your team, which has resulted in eliminated wait lists and a broader pool of people getting these essential services. So Rich did a great job of sharing that before and after perspective, of sharing the data points about, again, data can be, we eliminated a wait list or we're seeing more patients. It doesn't have to be that there was a percentage increase or a percentage decrease. It can be, that is still data as an outcome. And he also did a great job pulling in those testimonials from the folks on the front lines doing this work. So he added those humanizing touches. He made the case for how they're more efficient and how it's benefiting the community. So overall, a really good job with a genuinely difficult topic of QI and pairing that to other things. We're going to watch another example from eventually. There we go. This is from Kansas, and she'll tell you about what they're working on.
Prior to the Public Health Infrastructure Grant, the situation in the state of Kansas, specifically working with our subawardees, the local health departments, we have 94 of them in Kansas. And Kansas, by the way, is about 85% rural. So rural, frontier, et cetera. We have folks who were newer to this work and really desired and requested some additional assistance in managing their individual FIG workforce grants at their departments. So I would say before we stepped in, things were a little bit scattered and unclear, but our team was able to step in and develop a centralized technical assistance hub or technical assistance center, if you will, that provides all these different resources that our sub-grantees or subawardees rather need in order to be successful. We've provided so much technical assistance to the local health departments through something such as simple as creating a booking link and inserting that in our signature line. Through that booking link, we have been able to provide over 150 instances of TA to local health departments within the last 12 months, which is pretty amazing. In Kansas, our 94 local health departments have been able to utilize their public health infrastructure grant funding through many different ways. Majority of that would be through hiring on additional staff at their health departments, such as RNs, LPNs, and even CHWs, which is really exciting. They're also able to support their staff's benefits. We have some unique things such as helping folks with their community health needs assessments and improvement plans, offering their staff tuition assistance, or even loan repayment assistance for staff as well. I'm really thinking about the various local health departments across the state of Kansas and how FIG is showing up in their communities. I think about one county who has expressed their satisfaction with not only us on the FIG support team, but with the FIG grant. For example, they were able to fill some vacant roles they had for nurses that they couldn't fill for, I think, more than a year or so. But with FIG funding, they were able to increase the base pay rate for those roles, in which they were able to reach a wider candidate pool. So those roles are now filled. I think of another county that is able to serve patients after hours. So to meet folks, again, meeting folks where they're at, folks who work during the day and can't make it to an appointment between 8 and 5, they're now able to keep their clinic doors open past 5 p.m. and serve folks and their families. I think about local health departments who are able to provide car seats and get car seat technician training for their staff. They're able to insert those car seats for the folks they see at their clinic, those new families. I also think about how LHD staff are able to utilize FIG funds to attend trainings they could really never accessed before. Things like learning how to best support new moms, new dads, new families through things like perinatal mental health training. I also think about safe infant sleep training, making sure that all the folks in our communities have access to a safe sleep environment for their baby, which is alone on their back in their crib, and folks are able to give away free pack and plays to their patients as a result of funds from the FIG grant.
So this is another example of Kansas was able to, this is another sort of complicated activity that our speaker really beautifully connected to immediate local impact. So this is really about Kansas dispersing FIG funding and also providing technical assistance to their local health departments. So things that, again, feel like pretty internal or very like wonky infrastructure level. And she's able to talk about the before state of things were kind of scattered and these local health departments didn't have the resources they need to say, this is how we organized all of those resources and we gave our local health departments the help that they need with spending so that they were able to divert their time and expertise to doing what they do best, which is helping local communities. And then at the end, she gives us that beautiful list of examples that are so specific and so tangible of people are getting car seat installation assistance. They're getting safe sleep training. They are able to, they're getting community health workers, which allow them to reach more reach more folks with their services. So she's really able to, again, make that case of like, we have this funding, we are dispersing it out, but we're also not leaving people, hanging people out to dry. We're helping them figure out the best ways to use these resources. And then our local health departments are putting those resources into action. So this is a great before and after perspective. It's a great, again, when we think of both sort of humanizing touches and data of giving those specific examples of how that money is being used on a local level across 94 local health departments. She gave us some numbers, which is fabulous. But then also she really this is something that, yes, it could be public facing, but this is a story and a video that you could use again with your agency leadership or with other funders to really get into the weeds of, okay, we received this funding and this is exactly what we did with it. And these are the impacts that we had. So I do think of the audience of this as, yes, it could be public facing, but this is also, Ashley did a really beautiful job of explaining this work in a way that could be repurposed for conferences, for internal presentations, but really like for the field of here's a potential best practice for how we do things. And don't have evidence of best practice, but just it can be framed as this is something that really worked for us, and something you might want to replicate. So how are we making this happen? So you've seen these videos. Those were made possible because FIG provided the infrastructure for story capture and for me to go to all of these communities and interview folks and bring my camera crew and edit them down. But I do want to leave you guys with some food for thought before we go into questions. I do have a worksheet that's really meant to just help folks brainstorm the types of stories they want to tell. And again, this can be for the Public Health Infrastructure Grant, but it could be for anything that your health department is doing or any grant that you're working on. It's just 3 key questions, although there's quite a few sub-questions that can come from beyond that. And it gets back to what we've talked about today of getting at those key ingredients for your success story, adding those seasonings, but also really thinking about who you're trying to reach. So again, this is, as I'm sure everyone has heard before, we really want to be thinking about our audiences in storytelling. And I really want you guys to be thinking about, in my wildest dreams, if I wrote the best success story ever, or I had the best interview possible and it was so perfect, what would happen? Would you get more funding? Would you get organizational support? Would more people be using your services? Would everyone in your community know what you have to offer? So really thinking about, what do you want out of this communication? And thinking backwards from that, like, okay, who's in a position to make that happen? And that's how you're going to figure out who you're targeting as your audience. So when you're sort of working from what you want to highlight, thinking about who you're trying to reach, I strongly recommend framing this as one sentence of saying, your audience here will think, feel, or do something. So the example on this sheet is that the commissioner of my health department will believe that our newly expanded Office of Performance Management is key to de-siloing our agency and driving efficiency. She will allocate budget to ensure we can retain our new staff because she will understand how this office is creating significant long-term cost savings. So that's an internal thing. That's not an external. We're not trying to change the minds and hearts of every person in America. We're trying to reach one person who is in a position to continue funding or not. So really be thinking about, sometimes we are going to be trying to change hearts and minds, but sometimes we're not. So just really, we want to be tying our communications to our goals. And then the third question will be, what kind of information, data, or explanation does your audience need to hear to change their mind? Also, I recommend thinking about, okay, what format will work best for this? But really, this is where, again, you're going to think about those core ingredients of, what are we talking about? How did this funding make it possible? What are the community benefits? And then if you're trying to, say, reach a community partner, do they want to hear stories of people that have been to your clinics? Or do they want to hear stories of people that you've worked with before? Or do they want to hear program outcome data of, we've doubled enrollments in Healthy Start, or we have eliminated wait lists, or we're doing more of that sort of very tangible program data side of things? Or again, is a humanizing appeal, an emotional appeal, going to be more effective? And that's going to depend on who you're talking to, what data you have available, and what activity you're highlighting. So different things will work with different audiences and items. Again, as I mentioned, to some extent, we do want to, for format, written, video, audio, that's a lot going to depend on what you have access to. But again, you don't, this is my, as a communications person, I think this is my hill to die on of, if it can be a direct email to someone, you don't need to put it in a newsletter, or don't try to reach that person with a newsletter. If you have a direct line to someone and have a decision to act, use it. If you don't, absolutely use social media, use newsletters, use contacts with media, use your website. But I do think that we sometimes overlook the channels that are available to us, whether it's presentations, it's one-on-one meetings, it's going to, it's sharing this information with the field at, say, APHA or other things. So don't limit yourself to what we think of as traditional media in the social media, newsletter, press release, website sort of thing. So I know this is a lot of information, and I do want to plug the FIG story submission form for those who have FIG-focused success stories. You can visit phinfrastructure.org. You can submit a success story by clicking the Submit Your Success Story button on the success story page. Complete this form, and then a national partner will follow up with you. But I do want to, I know we have 7 minutes, and I want to make sure that I allow a little bit of time for questions if we have heard anything in the Q&A in the chat. And I don't know if I have the Q&A.
I don't see any questions, Chloe, in the Q&A. And it was at first, I just want to pause and thank you for just such an excellent presentation. I know some of the resources that you shared, we will send a follow-up email with those resources. Deepa also shared in the chat some examples of success stories, so please feel free to click on that link in the chat. I know just from working with you over the years what a phenomenal resource you are to the FIG community. So, thank you for taking the time to join us. And we will certainly make sure that any of the resources that were shared in your presentation are available to attendees of the webinar. We'll pause for just a minute to see if there's additional questions. But I know one of the things from experience with working with you is sort of a little bit of that vulnerability of, getting in front of the camera and sharing your story. And I wonder if you could, for those of us who have varying degrees of comfort in getting in front of the camera or being more transparent about sort of the work we do, and I think especially recognizing this, the how polarizing public health can be. I'm wondering if you have any sort of thoughts on one, how to encourage people to sort of take that leap of faith, and also if you have any thoughts on, sort of in this more polarizing climate, how you've helped health departments navigate communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think I have a few answers. I think the first, in terms of being vulnerable and getting on camera, I think again, like FIG has provided me this great opportunity to bring a professional camera crew to in-person events and talk to people. I understand that is not available to many, for many grants and for many folks to have that level. So oftentimes you don't need to be on camera because we don't have one. So that can be a little bit easier. But even, if you've got a great story to share, whenever I'm filming interviews, it's always, I would never publish something that someone's not comfortable with. So that is also like, it can even be, I do want to encourage people that even if you go down a storytelling path, whether it's written or audio or visual, like if at the end you hate it, that's okay. And you can say, you know what, I'm looking at this now and I don't feel proud of it. it's so important if because I'm going to ask you to share that story and to put it out there and to stand up next to it. Like it's that story, you are a critical part of that story. So you do need to be comfortable with it. I do always advise people on some level, like if you are feeling like you cannot stand up next to your video or your written story and feeling really proud and comfortable with it, then pull the plug because it's like we'll just try again. Like we'll get it right the next time. So I think there's that aspect. Another thing I always tell people is that and I think this is critical of I know different health departments have different relationships with their communications teams, but for for me, I think a lot of folks get really concerned about finding the exact right words, especially in the climate that we're in now of not saying the wrong thing. But it is my job to make you look good. So it's my vested interest for you to be able to say something in a way that communicates as well. And that's an iterative process and it's a back and forth. No one is ever going to say something perfectly on the first try. So again, whether you're writing it yourself or you're working with someone, get it all out in a first draft and then go back. You don't need to nail it the first time. Like go workshop it with other people, ask people what they think, what any red flags are, and again, sort of, and you're going to get there to the right message, but don't expect to get it right on the first try. No one does. I don't. I've been doing this for over 10 years, but I still am not getting it right on the first try. And then the last thing I'll say, I think, especially for thinking about this and talking about public health and communicating that in the time that we're in, I think a lot of us are understandably, we're inundated with news, and most of it is not positive about our field and about population health. But I think we can we don't need to respond to every piece of misinformation out there. We don't need to respond to every attack out there. We'll be stronger as a field if we can reinforce a few key messages, things like we're saving time, we're saving lives, and we're saving money, instead of spreading ourselves thin trying to change everyone's mind. So I do want to release everyone from the expectation if they had that they have to win everyone over, because we don't. We need to win over some certain folks. We need to demonstrate our value to as many people as possible, but we don't need to completely convince everyone that everything we're doing is super worthwhile. We do have, again, I think an opportunity and a responsibility to share again how we're using this funding to be more efficient and to help people. But we don't, if it's feeling like an impossible uphill battle, it probably is. And maybe it's time to redirect. Like if you're really like running against a wall, like maybe that's not the right audience. Maybe that audience is not in a position to support you. Maybe that audience is not in a position to act. Who else can we reach that is? Who else can we reach that is maybe a little bit further along that stages of change model that'll be more receptive to what we're doing? And I think it's really sort of like a gut instinct of if it's feeling impossible, then let's find a different approach that is a little more possible for us.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Chloe. It has really been a pleasure to host you and partner with you over the years. We are going to send out the follow-up resources that you mentioned and a recording. I want to be mindful of time. It is 1 o'clock. So, Chloe, thank you again, and thank you everyone for your participation today. Wishing everyone a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. Take care.